Hi, and welcome to my video tutorial on waterfall photography. Waterfall photography is one of the most spectacular types of photography that we can create. Learning how to photograph waterfalls not only inspires us to become great landscape photographers as well, but it also helps us to strive to become better photographers in general. There's one problem with taking photos of waterfalls that many enthusiasts struggle with. That's the light. Sometimes our waterfalls can be too dark or too bright. It seems to be quite a challenge to get the right exposure. So let's examine some ways now that we can take some sharp, clear and beautiful photos of waterfalls. In this waterfall photography tutorial, I will be discussing the main problems with exposure. Exposure is a term to describe how much nice light there is, or how much light in general. This means that the exposure of your waterfall must be just right, not too bright, not too dark. You see, this uneven balance of light can be very difficult when you're photographing your waterfall on a very bright day. You can see one of my earlier photos of a waterfall here. It was taken on an automatic setting over 10 years ago when I knew very little about photography. Thankfully, times have changed and I know what to do now. The problem with this photo is that the camera metered off the dark areas of the scene, and it forgot about the top section. As a result, the top of the waterfall is unseen simply because it's too overexposed or too bright. Years later, when I purchased Lightroom 4, I decided that I'd get to know it more by trying to fix some of my old shots. So I turned to the waterfall photo. And here's the result. I just couldn't fix it. The reason is because the photo was not taken properly to begin with. I tried to fix the highlights and reduce the brightness at the top. I tried to even out the light, but it still didn't work. Sadly, I just had to forget about this photo. When waterfalls are photographed on a bright day using the auto setting, we get one of two things. The waterfall is either perfectly exposed and all the surrounding elements like your mountain range and cliff face are underexposed or too dark. We also might be faced with the surrounding elements being just right, but the waterfall being overexposed or too bright. So how do we get both? How do we get the waterfall and the surroundings looking perfectly exposed without contrasting each other? The first thing I can recommend is to shoot in filtered light. A soft grey light will not only accentuate the beautiful green leaves surrounding your falls, but it will not overexpose anything too much either. You will still need to meter off the white water, however. You will notice that when taking a waterfall in filtered light, it's easy to get better exposure. The highlights are reduced and the shadows are not as strong. Light is refracted due to the clouds, and this is why we get a filtered look in our photos. So let's have a look at some examples of what waterfalls look like in filtered light. This photograph was a 3 composite panorama. Water is very tricky when you shoot your panoramas because you have to have your shutter speed very fast, and I'll talk about that in a different tutorial. Now let's examine this photo a little more closely. The light is coming from the top, and we see the shadows in the rock face below. To be able to create this waterfall photo, I made sure that I had the right exposure. I metered off the water. You can see that your waterfall will be the brightest thing in the scene, so it's important to tell the camera to meter off that. This works particularly well if you are spot metering. Let's look at the next photograph. This photo was taken from a distance on top of a bridge, looking well across a river. I wanted to be able to have a different vantage point, but it was not physically possible, so I just made use of what I had. How to photograph your waterfalls depends on your light, your vantage point, and getting the right exposure. Once you have all three, then you can enjoy going to the next level, which is editing. Sometimes bringing up the whites and the shadows just by a fraction will help you even out the light even more. You may want to increase the vibrancy or just increase one colour only. So take your time and find the right method that works for you. and soon your waterfalls will be looking like masterpieces that you want to hang on your wall. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you'd like to know more about how to get beautiful photos, simply go to my website, digitalphotographysuccess.com. Thanks so much for joining me. Happy shooting and bye for now.